You see it's kind of thick, but we're going to have to trim the shape of the wing in there, so I'm going to leave that in there. You can always trim that back after you put it in, but you can't add to it. So what you do is on the inside of the bend, you notice I got that right in the middle. I'm going to do 2 secure wraps. I'm going to look at it, see if it's right in the middle of the bend, right where I want, so that the wing's even, not up or down, so when it lays on the water, I don't want it to be penetrating the water or sticking up in the air. And I'm just going to wrap forward 2 or 3 wraps and look at it. Now in the book there's also what's called the knockdown cripple, which is a real important fly out here in the west, where you get a little bit more wind. And what it is a mayfly, especially the duns, they'll tip over to one side when they're trying to hatch. We saw that this morning on the spring creek we were fishing. They were consistently, more than 2/3 of them were coming down. Even the adult duns that were getting knocked over kept getting gusts, and they'd fight to get back up. And so in the book we show how to do both. And the only difference between the standard cripple and the knockdown is, instead of cutting this wing off at this point, you take it, stand it up, and just do a wrap around it. Get one in here, and then we'll finish the fly. You'd cut this one off as one upright wing, and if you're doing and leave this one down, we'd clip it like we will in a minute here. But I'm not going to do the knockdown. It's just a nice option to do if you have areas where you have a lot of wind. But like I said, we're not going to do that. So I'm going to go in here, tighten that down, make sure it's where I want it. On this one, I'm not going to leave the upright wing. I'm just going to cut this off, and we're going to finish it as a traditional, or my version of a traditional cripple. And you know, the term I use for this fly, cripple, isn't really accurate, because they've completed their life cycle. If it's a spinner, they've done it, you know, complete. They've just laid down to one side. And if you're using it as a knockdown, they still have the ability to get up sometimes. You know, sometimes they get their wing trapped, but frequently they just kind of flop around, their wing goes back up. But even on those healthy knockdown duns, if you look at them, they have to contort their body kind of to the left or right to get pressure on the water surface to lift that wing up. So it's really good for that also. So on this one, we're going to pick a hackle up here. Actually, I already picked one out here, and I want a hackle that's a little bit longer than a traditional dry fly hackle, because one, we're going to trim almost all of it off, and two, if you look at a natural, it generally has a little bit longer leg than we do for a traditional winged dry fly. So we're going to take a little bit longer hackle, and if you want to just, you know, fold it over and look, that's fine. If you don't, you know, if you're pretty good at guessing, you can go ahead and do that. I will tell you that if you do a hackle gauge, if you use the ones that fit on the bottom of the vise, if you use one of those, I would go at least 2 sizes bigger than it tells you to use. So if you're doing a size 12 or size 16, you'll go to a size 12 generally. And I'm going to cut this hackle off, the bottoms off. I'm not going to strip those off. I'm just going to cut them off on each side so that I get a little bit better tie down. And then I'm going to tie this in right on top of the hook. And I want the feather to be concave side down, the convex side up, or the shiny side of the feather up. And I'm just going to secure that down, 3 or 4 wraps of hackle. And then we're going to go back and we're going to take our dubbing, blend it up a little bit because that other stuff blew away here. And really fine dubbing here. We don't want to have more buildup than we need, because we've already got the wing cut off here. There we go. And I go right over top of this. I'm going to put 1 wrap behind the wing, and that's just to keep it out just a little bit. And I'm going to continue right forward, right to the head. So I've got a nice evenly dubbed body. You can take your hackle pliers if you want to use them. On a long hackle, it's not really critical. But what I'm trying to do is I'm going to try to keep the feather so that the hackles are pointing backwards. I'm going to put one turn behind the wing, one in front of the wing, and then we're going to take third wrap through the thorax. Okay. Now I'm going to show you a little trick. In the book, you'll notice that I have, on the cover of the book, the cripples have antenna, and how you get that is to put one wrap over the hackle, and so the hackle's to the right side or the far side of the hook, and then you just simply pull the hackle back and make a wrap through it, a wrap over it, and then finish the head as you normally would. And what that's going to do, we've got two secure wraps there. It's going to give me just a couple of the hackles there, and I can just pull it across and finish the head off as normal. But it'll give me a couple of them out there. And if you look at a natural, you'll see they've got forelegs there. It's not a real critical thing. It just kind of dresses the fly up a little bit. And then we're just going to go in here, do your whip finish. Try not to get your hackles in there or your antennas in. Make sure that your thread's nicely secured. Go in and cut it off. Now, this is the most critical part of the fly, and it's really the easiest place you can make a mistake, is trimming off this wing. And I trim the wing first before I trim the legs out, and I pull this forward. If you stretch, this is what you can't do. Don't stretch the wing to cut it, because it's springy. It's gonna jump back shorter if you pull it tight. So you just pull it so that it's not stretched, and then pull it back to where you can see it's at the end of the abdomen, and you make a cut directly at the abdomen, because if you look at the shape of the wing, you'll see it's got a little curve to the wing, at the tail of the wing, and you're going to want to be able to cut that in. So I've just cut that off as the first shape, and now I'm going to go in and just kind of trim it up to make it, and open up some of those fibers. I'm going to give it the shape of a natural wing. It's probably not that critical, but if you're like I am, if you're looking through your fly box and you've tied all your own flies, the one that catches your eye is the one you're going to fish. And if you've made a mistake in one and you didn't correct it, it'll sit there and you might as well never tie it, because you're going to get rusty and you're going to throw it away at the next season because you never used it. So the closest I can get these to perfect the first time, I have a lot more likelihood of using the fly later. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to tip the fly upside down, and I'm going to cut this hackle right flush. This is most of my flies are film flies. I do very few high riding flies. I want them to sit right down flush in the film. Earlier today we were talking about that on the river, that they aren't as easy to see, but they tend to fish better, especially in water that's been used by a lot of other anglers. So I'm just going to go in here and trim this up a little bit, looking at it from the bottom, making sure everything's nice and flush. And again, if you don't want your little antenna or forelegs up here, you don't have to do it, but I usually leave them in there. And I think you can see that. I'm trying to get it over there so you can see exactly. The critical thing about this fly is from the bottom is that you can see both the wing shape, the curvature, and then the legs. That's the most critical part of the entire fly. And again, if you look at the body, you'll see that it's kind of a mottled body. It's not a consistent color. And I like to do that even on a PMD or some of the betas that just show a little bit of variegation in their abdomen. And even some of the little betas and trikes, even the white ones, even have a little bit of a little tiny bit of variegation to their abdomen. So it's nice to see that inconsistency in the body. That's the signature cripple off of my new book, Spinners and Cripples.